Before getting into editing with Adobe Premiere Pro, let's start out by learning how to navigate the interface. So up here at the top, we've got these three modes. Import we'll look at later, edit where you'll be doing most of your work, and export for sharing your work with the world. Again, we'll look at that later. I'm going to spend most of my time here in the edit mode. You'll notice that the interface is divided into different panels. Each time you click into one, you get a blue highlight to indicate that the panel's active. And selection is really important in Premiere Pro. You'll get different menu options and the functionality will be different. The keyboard shortcuts work differently depending on which panel's active or what item you have selected. You can switch between workspaces, that's these particular layouts, by clicking on the workspaces menu up here and choosing a different option on the list. Each of these has panels laid out in a way that's useful for a particular type of editing work. Importantly, you can also go right down here on the menu and choose Reset to Saved Layout. So if you're ever following along with any tutorials, just start by doing that and you'll know you're on the same page. At the top, we've got our regular menus: File, Edit, Clip Sequence. I just call these menus, and you'll use them sometimes, but most of the time you'll find there are buttons or right-click menu options that will do what you need to do in the main body of the interface. You'll notice that each panel has a name, and all of the panels are listed in the window menu. So if you ever can't find a panel, just look for it in the window menu. They're in alphabetical order. Most of the panels have this little 3 lines menu. This is called a panel menu, and these give you options that are specific to the panel that you're working with. You can resize and reposition these panels and drag them by the name into different areas of the interface. You can really wreck it if you want to, and then just go back and reset. Of course, as you develop your own editing style, you may find that there are different layouts that you prefer, and you can just go into the menu here and you can save as a new workspace. You'll notice also there's a little home button up here that takes you back to the first screen you get when you load up Premiere Pro. We'll look at that when we create a new project. Down here in the middle, we've got a number of tools that might be a little bit reminiscent to you if you're familiar with working in Photoshop. Most of the time, you're going to want to be using this tool at the top, the selection tool. The keyboard shortcut for that is V, and that's perhaps the only keyboard shortcut you should absolutely make sure you remember in this course. You'll use the selection tool to select items that you've already added to sequences. This is a sequence that we're building inside of Premiere Pro. This is our edited work. And you've got other tools here for selecting lots of clips. You've got a type tool that you can use to click into. This is the program monitor where you look at the work you're building. You can click in there and type in some words or perhaps something a little bit more useful as a graphic or a title. There's a shape tool, a pen tool, and there's various tools that will allow you to change the parts of the clips that you've got incorporated into your sequences. Now, there are a lot of panels, and the good news is that when you need a particular panel, you'll probably already have a sense of what that panel is for. So don't worry right at the beginning about memorizing what each panel does and what the tools are. But a couple of useful ones to be familiar with are here. We've got the project panel. This is like a bucket that contains all of your assets, your clips, your video and audio files that you may or may not decide to incorporate into a sequence. You build sequences here in the timeline panel. Now, the timeline panel is named after the sequence you're working on. This is a sequence called Theft Unexpected. And you'll see you can probably just about make out these tracks that you lay clips into to combine them into sequences. If I expand one of these folders, these are called bins, and double click, you see a little bit like YouTube or Vimeo. I get a preview window. I can scrub through, I can press play or pause, I can use the spacebar to play and stop, and this is for reviewing your content, as distinct from the program monitor where you look at your sequence contents. There's a properties panel for looking at and adjusting the settings for things like positioning and scale for your clips. And there's also an effect controls panel where you can modify things like opacity and playback speed and volume and so on. Those are probably the main panels for you to be familiar with, and most of your work in Premiere Pro, you'll be just using these panels.